Hello, everyone. My name is Fawn Walker Montgomery, and thank you for joining us on TAG's Voices of Liberation podcast. So, for the new folks here, I'll just go over do an overview of what TAG is, who we are, and what we do. So, TAG stands for Take Action Advocacy Group, and we are a Black liberation organization in the greater Pittsburgh area. We primarily do our work in the area we affectionately call the Mon Valley, which is outside of the bigger city of Pittsburgh, and we focus there as well as other small communities and other places, I would say, because a lot of your racism is deep rooted and is traditional in these smaller communities. That's where a lot of police run their communities, like sheriffs. And there's a lot of black people and other people, other marginalized groups there that feel, I would say, less heard and not supported. So that's why TAG primarily focuses on those smaller communities. And the way we take action, we have various diverse community programming. So the first one is our abolition social work or a complaint program. And that's where anyone can call in and get assistance with any social justice issue they may be having. We walk them through the process, answer any questions. Though that's a short term program. We do have some people that stay with us for a few years, just depending on what's going on. Majority of folks just need help with answering questions about how the legal system is structured, what their rights are within that system. We give people advocacy plans. Most times you don't hear about those. Sometimes they turn into blogs. But most time no one even knows we're working with them. We also have chapters, so you just have to live in one of the Mon Valley communities, and if you don't, then you could be a supporter to be within our chapters, and they have action plans that they work on. And we also do training and consulting for individuals, groups, nonprofits on community organizing, Black liberation, wellness, planning, power mapping. We can do a bunch of trainings, and we have done in the past on environmental justice for some local nonprofits in our community. And then we also have several different initiatives we support. And this year we are focused on environmental justice, police violence, the food insecurity that we experience here in the Mon Valley. And then we're also focused on wellness and healing, which is why we do our um, wellness sessions as well as we just started endometriosis support group. That's a little bit about us. We've been around 10 and a half years. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year. And we started this podcast, it has to be about a year and a half or 2 years now. We've been doing the podcast, and we started it because our complaint program, we had a lot of families, and we still do, that we're working with that are just not getting the attention that they need to get. So literally, that's how the podcast started. We just wanted to get their stories out there more. So that's where the podcast started, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own, which is a good thing. So we started to do it once a month, and we started to talk about different issues. So we always center those issues around what we're working on. So this particular podcast, we are going to be talking about police violence and focusing on the McKeesport area, which is one of the Mon Valley communities that we work in. And we have the honor of being joined by Bobbie Fan with Against Carceral Tech, badass community organizer that we've had the privilege to work with a lot over the years. So I'm going to bring on Bobbie.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, I think having worked with you over the years, just having a platform to really de-platform the narrative that is in place is so important. So just happy to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. And can you tell us a little bit about what Against Carceral Tech is?
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Bobbie Fan. I have been organizing with Against Carceral Tech maybe now since 2019. It began in the form of maybe two different organizing
Mhm.
chapters. So one was focused on immigration surveillance and border control and the technology supporting that and trying to intervene there. So that was Senior Against ICE. That was in concert with the campaign that Mi Gente led around No Tech for ICE. And then the other one was the Coalition Against Predictive Policing, which I think is a little bit how we first maybe
Yep.
met each other, along with the contacts with Pittsburgh for Public Transit and the Mon
Hmm.
Valley Beyond the East Busway campaign, so on. Um, but with the Coalition Against Predictive Policing, that was around um, the use of a racist policing technology that sent extra policing patrols to predominantly black communities using racist data, which essentially was past crime data, past arrest data,
Hmm.
that reflects the history of racist policing, and reinforcing it and making it appear objective. So a lot of what Against Carceral Tech, um, the work of that organizing is around holding institutions, beyond holding institutions accountable. It's also
Hmm.
it's creating um, pathways for insider outsider accomplice work to target the ways that tools and systems are made to reinforce a
Hmm.
carceral system, and to recreate the older systems of racist and capitalist forms of oppression, using the form of like new technology.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know it was you all that kind of pointed out to us about the scanning of the like the facial recognition and the dangers
Hmm.
of how they were using that, um, for
Yeah.
policing. So
Yes.
I don't think people understand this new age of AI and all this technology and how violent it can be. To me, it's like right up there with data,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
if it's not done correctly, it can be used, very harmful, especially to to Black people and other other marginalized groups. So it was your organization that pointed out to us first.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great example of, like, a technology that is somewhat widely accepted.
Hmm.
There's people use their phones to get in, they use facial recognition, with their phones, or they see it at the airport, or, and, it is so tied to the way that the private industrial complex and the state is trying to, further kind of create, what great organizer in Detroit called Tawana Petty.
Hmm.
She organized with like Detroit Community Technology Project against facial recognition, and she called it a perpetual lineup. And
Hmm.
even other technologies that aren't facial recognition, that's kind of what um, is being created, in terms of creating new tools for policing, creating new technology for policing. It's to create both like a data-based and a tech-based way of keeping people in line. Creating a population of folks who are
Hmm.
constantly aware that they're being watched, whether it's through their digital activities or on the street. And we know that that's what the police are doing,
Hmm.
in their physical presence. And it's the ways that these tools augment their powers that is like extra concerning. Um, but also, I think that's why I'll say, like, we can't take credit for the work against facial recognition either, because so much, sort of, alarm bell sounding
Hmm.
happened even so many years before. In Pittsburgh now, there is legislation
Hmm.
that prohibits the use of facial recognition, but that has not stopped police departments, I think, including McKeesport, from doing things like partnering with Amazon Ring doorbell, and using the Ring doorbells as active surveillance cameras for the police, which many people don't realize, and also using things like Clearview, or the most common one is also just having the ability to search driver's licenses and use facial
Hmm.
recognition on driver's licenses. And then when you couple that with social media, we know that they use social media to target protesters during George Floyd protests. So, um, like all these tools are definitely not like being used innocently. There's no sort of cap on, um, the abuse of power
Hmm.
that when these tools are made available to the city and then
Hmm.
made available to the police, there's no oversight. Um, there's no accountability whatsoever. They can just use those tools and do whatever they want with them with
Hmm.
impunity, which is a very similar to kind of what we're here to talk about in the first place with the McKeesport Police,
Yeah.
where there's absolutely no form of accountability, no form of oversight. You know, the McKeesport police are stealing from the evidence lockers,
Yes.
and then yeah, just committing brutality, and then claiming that everything is fine, that they have it under control. So I think it's all very similar.
Hmm.
This this sort of like very um, uh, you create an abusive environment when you create an environment without accountability.
Hmm. Yeah, and just to kind of update everyone, so McKeesport, that is one of the communities in the Mon Valley that we work in. It's where we started doing our work. It is my hometown, and it has always been horrible with police here. We've been fighting it since our existence, the past 10.5 years, in regards to their excessive force, their abuse of power. We have an open lawsuit against them for 2020 when Kobe Francis shot an officer, a Keysport officer. Officer survived, thank God, but they terrorized our community to try to find Kobe, and they were knocking on doors. They were like searching people at gunpoint, pulling people out of their cars. So we ran around and did rapid response while they were doing that. About at least it lasted about 4 to 5 days. So we filed a lawsuit against them for that. We have some community members within that lawsuit who had their rights violated with, the illegal searches. And then this last year, we had at least 2 to 3 officers arrested. One for stealing money from the evidence locker. The whole evidence locker was under investigation for about 7 months. And then we had an officer who stole money from another officer's slain fund, like literally money for the man's family. So we had that going on, and then over the past 2 months, we had two viral videos where officers were on video showing excessive force. One is to an elderly, 72-year-old elderly black man who had a visible trach in his throat, and they're on camera, brutalizing black people. So that's what's been going on, I would say, the last 2 years, and that's kind of why we're talking about it today. And I have three questions for you, Bobbie, but I want to frame it in the context of the demands that we have here. So our demands consist of releasing the body cam videos. We want all the officers terminated. We want a police review board. We also want mental health responders to respond with the police, and we want them to defund their budget by 10% and reinvest that money back into Black communities. Now, there was a council meeting yesterday. So I'm going to now announce what the mayor said at this council meeting. And this was their response to what occurred. So he basically blamed the ground. He said that it was the sidewalk, it was the ground that scratched up Mr. Stinson. That's the gentleman's name is Callie Stinson Jr. So he said the ground did that, and they called in the FBI to also look at the body cam footage alongside with them because one of their officers they trust wholeheartedly to do this investigation worked with the FBI, and they all said the video was fine. There's nothing done wrong. They said the cops were placed on paid administrative leave during this investigation, but now they're back because the investigation proved that there was nothing done wrong. They kept bringing up the NAACP and how they were meeting with them. They haven't really been meeting with us. That's the safer organization, I would say. So he brought all these things up. And then he just ends by saying, he wants the body cam videos to be released because he wants people to see the compassion that was shown by these officers after they handcuffed Mr. Stinson and everyone was respectful. That's what he kept saying. After that, everyone was respectful.
I'm sorry, and also the ground?
Ground. That's what he said. Literally, the ground. So people did speak. We have folks lined up to speak, and Mr. Stinson's sister got up and she said, "The ground doesn't have feet, hands, or
No.
legs." So, so that's literally what we're dealing with here. And then there was a lot of question they kept asking about the demand around defunding,
Mhm.
which kind of leads me to my question for you, because we want the police budget to be defunded by 10%.
Mhm.
And we want that money to be, invested back into Black communities. It can go to, there's already a grant fund through Trueville, which is the medical marijuana plant we have in McKeesport, and the Pittsburgh Foundation is involved in that. They can put the money there. They can give it to one of the churches or whatever one of these Black organizations we have in the city of McKeesport. So my question to you is, and you've kind of already talked about the first one, like how does your work affect local communities and policing? And then why do you feel like we should be looking at these police budgets?
Mm. Yeah. I I think that's like the whole, I think the entirety of how I view the organizing against Carceral Tech is around, following the leadership of affected communities in terms of the violence and harm and also the vision, right? The vision
Mm-hmm.
of what communities want to see built,
Yeah.
which, you know, the police and all the millions of priority funding
Mm-hmm.
that goes to the police like actively gets in the way of. And I actually just wanted to like, in hearing even the announcement from this council meeting,
Yeah.
actually wanted to update you, Fawn, because maybe a couple years ago now, we worked together around some research I was doing
Mm-hmm.
around the around public engagement that was especially during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic and McKeesport and the experiences that the community was having in McKeesport with both the unlawful seizures and searches that happened after Kobe, and also the denial of access to the city council meeting.
Yes.
That actually is now a case study in a research paper that we've published. It's in the um, 2022 volume of Human Computer Interaction. It's been cited by 16 different papers also. And so it's actively, it's actively looking at how, this is all an ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the way that the Keysport City Council denies access and also refuses to listen to community members as a part and parcel of police violence and in enabling that violence to continue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that is that is out there if folks want to read it. It's called Access Under Duress: Pandemic Era Lessons on Digital Participation and Datafication in Civic Engagement. Um, so,
Yeah, we'll
you know,
definitely put that in the chat for sure.
yeah. The main reason why I wanted to put that out
Mm-hmm.
there is that I think that um, you know, I think there needs to be maybe some awareness that the actions that are happening are not happening in isolation. Folks are
Mm-hmm.
looking at what McKeesport is doing. I think at the last rally that you had um, outside the police department, you had an amazing speaker kind of speak to the ways that the history of McKeesport also ties over to the brutality of that of police violence in terms of McKeesport's history in industry and the ways that the police emerge from that, like
Yeah.
many parts of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
as a part of protecting interests of capital and of the state, but not of the community.
Yeah.
Um, And so I think that, you know, maybe this is a way to just call attention to, like, there are folks paying attention to what's happening in McKeesport.
Mm-hmm.
It is, you know, it's a lesson that is being um, you know, taken for, you know, for advocates and for researchers and other folks who are trying to understand, like, how can we actually build community power. um, and you know, times have changed since, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and times need to change, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
what is this police budget for, how is it benefiting the community, and how is this ecosystem of, you know, how city council is acting in concert to the interests of the police but not to the community, how is that sustainable
Mm-hmm.
long term for the community. um, I think that, you know, it's easy to get caught up in, you know, a an argument that's just trying to take down, like, oh, you know, these folks are just being loud again, you know, they don't
Mm-hmm.
like, well, they just don't like us, they don't like, they have a problem with the police, but it's actually like, this is actively an issue for the long term and for the community of McKeesport. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, your work and I think the work that against Carceral Tech has, you know, tried to support, you know, as a part of in coalition with, like, the coalition or the uh, policing in Allegheny County coalition that was abolition focused. Like, all of that is centered around, you know, what can actually support the thriving of community.
Mm-hmm.
And with the um, lack of prioritization around actual community resources and actual opportunities, um, and having all that money be centered around policing and keeping folks within the carceral justice system,
Mm-hmm.
um, that only continues to depress, you know, that only continues to, like, create a pattern that like is self-serving but also for the police, but also ends up being self-destructive, you know, like, at what point do you um you know, is the community you're serving you know, being um like, at what, you know, at what point have you harmed the community that you're supposed to be serving enough that, you know, you've lost sight of, like, what you're actually supposed to be protecting, or
Mm-hmm.
and so I do think that the demands that are being made, you know, are makes so much sense. You know, one of the things that we looked at and we mentioned to you was around ShotSpotter, which is an example of police surveillance technology that is only installed in Black communities, and, you know, this is across the country, but in Pittsburgh, when you look at the map, it's only Black neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. There are no sensors in, like, Squirrel Hill or Oakland. And then you look at it, and the other location that they have
Mm-hmm.
ShotSpotters is McKeesport, and uh, it's, you know, we
Can
have
you
it
explain what that is? Like a shot.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So ShotSpotter is like a microphone that they install on, like, a utility pole or a gas station or a school, and sometimes people don't even realize it's installed on their property. Um, and this microphone is listening sort of 24/7. It's taking that recording and it's running it through AI or machine learning. And it's very imperfect technology where it has a lot of trouble distinguishing between different types of loud noises.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, the problem with that is that this technology is then possible to be, first of all, it goes to a private company where that private company, Sound Thinking, their main motivation in life is to get more money from the police. So they're going to do what the police wants them to do. So they've done things like manufacture evidence for police when the police requests, you know, like, oh, you need to say that a gunshot happened here, and um, that evidence you know, the use of ShotSpotter data has also been used in court cases
Mm,
against folks. And so you can see how that's a really toxic combination, not to mention just the pure fact that it's sending additional police to Black neighborhoods.
yeah.
So it represents a kind of investment that I don't know how many folks in McKeesport knew about this contract. I was surprised that, when we spoke about it, Fawn, it
Mhm.
was a surprise to you too. And so it goes to show there was no there was no public consultation. Like, hey, we're gonna take our dollars and we're gonna install sensors for the police,
Yeah.
all over the neighborhood in secret locations. And so I think this relates back to like what we're talking about with the connection between city council and the police,
Mm-hmm.
that those dollars, which should be benefiting the community, which
Yeah.
should be going to, providing safe and thriving kind of infrastructure and opportunities for folks, food and health and
Mhm.
public transit and all the
Right.
ways to connect folks and bring folks, job opportunities and other things like
Mhm.
that. Instead, that money is going somewhere where the folks, the taxpayers in, McKeesport also have no clue, like, where is this money going to? Um, and
Mhm.
is it actually benefiting us? So I think the demands are very reasonable. Like they're maybe like just scratching the surface of what really needs to happen.
Mhm.
And I think that um, to I think that what's within the demands is really an ask for um, transparency and an accountability to the community again that this money is supposed to benefit, which it's not happening, and it's actually enabling all these abuses and brutality against community members, not uh, which is not happening. It's not being perpetrated by the ground, it's not being perpetrated by the sidewalk, so there's actively arming a police force that has shown multiple times that um they're that they are willing to break the law, in terms of breaking
Mhm.
into people's homes without warrants, that they're willing to, brutalize community members as a norm.
Yeah.
And they're willing to steal from the public, from themselves, and who knows what else. That this giving more money to this kind of entity is crazy. um,
Literally.
like actually you maybe could put more money into the ground, to the sidewalk, to fix some of the
Right.
streets and the potholes and
Right.
make sure that people can uh, that would be a better use of money.
Right. And I wonder how. Do you know how many shot spotters we have in McKeesport?
That's a great question. There is a map of
Mhm.
where the ShotSpotter locations are in a Wired article, that shows,
Okay.
shows kind of where they are. We don't have an exact count, actually. That's something that we're still researching.
Mhm.
But in Pittsburgh, their contract with ShotSpotter was about 8 million for 8 years, so it was about a million
Mhm.
a year. So in McKeesport, it's probably, something a little bit lower than that, but
Mhm.
probably something similar, in terms of the scale.
Yeah.
So I can imagine at least, a couple $100,000 for going to that contract, if not more. And it's a problem that that's not publicly available. It's a problem that
Yeah.
that money is just changing hands. No one knows where it's going.
And we've had them for a while because when I was on council, I remember them bringing it up. And I do remember there's been discussions about it. So they've been around for a while. At that time, now this I was on council from 2009 to 2017,
Hmm.
and they put them out to projects. I remember a cop that came to one of the council meetings and said this is beneficial. So I know that they had put them out there, but then somebody saw them and started shooting them out. So then they put them in different places. But that's as much as they've been public about, about.
Mm,
No one mentioned that it's used to, um, work with the police. That it's used to, call police there, and the sounds could be off. Like
mm-hmm.
no one mentioned the harmful side of it at all, actually.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is all, things that kind of go back to what we're talking about, especially looking at a police budget. So McKeesport is, like I said, in the Mon Valley. There are a host of issues that are going on here. So when Bobbie brought up, our story being in that, a part of our story being in that, the magazine made sense to me, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that people are listening to us and sharing our story. But they did lock us out of the council meeting. So when we advocated for what they did to us in 2020, we went to the council meeting. They locked the door on us. We had to file a lawsuit with the ACLU to get access. Now we've had at this point 3 lawsuits. We had one against the school district, which we won to get the Black Student Union. We've had one to get access to the council meeting, and now we're on the third one. We're in
Wow.
it, and these are all centered around policing or white supremacy. So there's
Mm-hmm.
this all these things going on in McKeesport. We can't breathe. We can't drink the water because of the steel mill. We have horrible air quality issues, horrible water here. We have violence. We don't have economic development. We don't have jobs for the community. We don't have activities for the kids. There's a bunch of, I mean, take your pick. We got food insecurity issues here. We have horrible access to food, horrible transportation. The money from the police budget can be used so many other ways than what it is being used for presently. In most communities, your police budget is your biggest budget. It's no different in McKeesport. I don't have the exact number for the last year. I'll put the budget that is online in the chat section so people can actually, and they should look at it and really break it down and ask yourself, where's all this money going? Um, Another thing that McKeesport, I guess, is known for is not solving any cases.
Mm,
People have joked that they come here to get away with things. So, with that being said, what is the money actually, being used for? And that's why we're pushing for people to look at these police budgets. And I love everything that you kind of pointed out with the tech, because that is how technology is being presented to us over here. No,
mm,
these are good things. These are new things. This is what people are doing now, you guys. Like, and no one is taking the time to really like explain it to us in the harm
mm-hmm.
that it's a tool for police, to enact more harm
Mm-hmm.
to us. No one is having those specific kind of conversations. So, I guess my last question for you would be: when you do have these conversations with communities, um, how are you pointing to a solution? Is advocacy the solution? Is it coalition building? And because after you point these things out, because people don't know, they absolutely do not know some of the harms of AI or some of the harms of just technology and how it's being used to maintain, white supremacy and systemic structures. They just don't. Those conversations aren't being had because there's this whole like, and technology is not bad, but like anything in life, it's all about who's using it and how they're doing it. So, how are those conversations you're having with community members, and then what are some of the solutions?
Yeah. I think that the conversation actually helps point us to the question of like, what are we building?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, with something like technology, technology I think is just the latest form of what capitalism is trying to produce. And like the way that our labor feeds into that is an essential part of their pyramid scheme. I'll say, it's they're not able to produce these tools and weapons and surveillance infrastructure without the participation of the folks making it. And so a big focus of um, talking about the impact is also introducing personal accountability to everyone who is to everyone in terms of understanding like what are the ways that I am a part of the system, what are the ways that I can
Mhm.
help break that um, production, that connection, that you know of these tools, and amplify instead what I feel like. I've been taking some language from a book called Saving Time by Jenny Odell. And she talks about vertical structures versus horizontal ones, and vertical ones being all the institutions and state systems, versus horizontal, which is like really
Mhm.
connections that we have that are built by trust and relationship. Um,
Yeah.
and the other side of the question of like what are we building is for example with the state or with the police, like what are we building when you're putting in technology or you're funding a police department that has only shown a track record of abuse and violence. What are you building with that? And instead, what could you be building with those resources, with that money? Because it's at the best, in the best sort of view of what public safety is supposed to do, it's
Mhm.
still after a crisis, after violence has already occurred. And instead, there isn't enough resources going to instead, how can we actually look towards preventative measures, but also beyond preventative
Mhm.
measures. How can we actually create thriving communities that are filled with um,
Mhm.
you know uh, neighbors who are walking around or able to get to the grocery store or able to get their health needs met and able to find job opportunities. All these things are proven over and over to uh, have effects that multiply, at an economic level or and also at a safety level. But also, it's
Mhm.
what you want to build. It's you want to build a thriving community,
Mhm.
and even the way that public uh, urban planning has sort of deprioritized all the areas
Mhm.
outside of the city of Pittsburgh. That's a part of that. And I think that you know there's a lack of recognition at the way that gentrification and all these forces within the city of Pittsburgh is continuing to force and displace folks out further and further into the Mon Valley and other
Mhm.
places outside the city. And so there's still a question of you know are the needs of the communities being met, and are they being overlooked in terms of what is being built, right, and
Mhm.
what kind of resources um, are we creating and connecting. So yeah, I think that because when people hear things, you know when people talk about policing or surveillance, the first, often there is a first conversation that is like, well, we want police, we want
Yeah.
even surveillance, because the idea is that we want safety, which
Yeah.
we see as a resource. But the thing is, that resource is actually representing so many of the other resources that are missing, and that real safety comes from the investment and growing of real community resources, the real community power, the ability you know um, to have have access to healthy food, and have easy access to public transit to connect you to
Yeah.
all the other resources in the
Mhm.
area, um, and really basic necessities that, again, when um, going back to the conversation about technology and
Yeah.
so on, that those things are often lost. And And it's crazy how often, folks lose the thread of like what's really important. What again are we building?
Yeah, I love that question. Like, what are we building? What are we being a part of?
Mhm.
And I don't think people ask that question when it comes to technology. So, like, when I pick up, my phone,
Mm.
I got this fancy thing, if you could see it, but I think of Congo.
Mhm.
Time I
Yeah.
use the phone, I think of Congo and what my people over there are going through, so I can have a phone.
Mhm.
So it's just having those conversations with people so they can ask themselves that, like, what
Yeah.
am I building? What am I? I feel like we are so oppressed over here, that people just come over here sometimes and they give us bright and shinies and shit. And
Mm.
some people are like, yes, to give us all the bright and shinies because we deserve all the bright and shinies. But like, we are the bright and shinies. The people
Yes.
are
Yes.
like, we are the answer to all of. We are the actual solution. So it's
Mhm.
us asking, what are you gonna do with that technology?
Mhm.
How is
Mhm.
that going to affect the community as a whole? Is it going to make things worse? Is it going to make things better? We have this, we have a lot of violence over here, and people use that, to have this law and order approach to it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of our elected officials have responded with the law and order, and we're going to get things under control. And it doesn't last, it's not sustainable, it brings more harm. And I feel like that's what we're living in right now in McKeesport. And then we
Mhm.
have 47 just empowering
Yes.
these police officers. So that's what I feel like is happening right now. We had like a law and order era, and the
Mhm.
shit didn't work. So now they're like, we'll just give you more law and order. We'll just give you more police, and we'll just give you
Right.
more surveillance. And we have to be able to question those. So a lot of our demands tie back into that defunding, so the money can be put back into places. So I wanted to have that conversation with you
Mhm.
about tech, because you look at the police budget, that's where the shop spotter money is at.
Mhm.
It's all in the police budget. You'll see all that technology and where it's going. Even the body cam footage, which, sometimes they want that released.
Mhm. Mhm.
So all of that is within the police budget. So you really have to look at that budget and see it's more than just their salaries.
Mhm.
It's way
Mhm.
more than that. There's fees in there for their unions, the union lawyers. Like, you really have to look at these budgets. So thank you for coming on and having this conversation about technology. And is there any lasting thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, no, I think that just to what you're saying about how, our all of us are interconnected,
Hmm.
both in the ways that, systems of oppression are, drawing together all the resources and exploiting, the labor and resources of people across the world, but also the way that the law, the irony of what you're saying, right, of law and order is that it's the opposite. It's it's the most lawless and
Hmm.
orderless
Yes.
system of fear and oppression, and it's something that we're obviously seeing now at a national level, but has always been there in the form of, what's taking place with, um, you know, uh, agencies like the McKeesport Police, right, in um, providing the very opposite of lawfulness, if we're holding anyone to a standard.
No, exactly, exactly. So I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation, because it is so important. It's so important to have, and thank you for being part of telling our story.
Yeah.
We appreciate that, because sometimes we're over here, we're like, do people even know?
No, people are watching. People
Good,
know. Mm-hmm.
good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. I appreciate that. So I'm going to move on to, this is the part where I say I talk shit.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to stay. It's totally up to you if you want
I'm
to
here
stay.
for it.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So as far as my talking shit piece, I do want to add a little bit more about the council meeting last night, because I want to pick apart what the mayor did, because he did a lot of things that are like white supremacy coded, and I want people to recognize that. So he started out, by saying how They took the steps to go through and have the investigation done by one of the best officers. You cannot have the police investigating the police. It makes no sense. It's not objective. It's complete bias. He brings up the FBI as if the FBI has any of a good record with the black community or any marginalized community. For that point, he blamed the sidewalk. He blamed the sidewalk for this man's ribs being broken. And outside of the people in the audience, no one said anything. So I'm extremely disappointed in the council for not saying, what? Like, what are you even talking about? They went in the back and they had a private meeting before the council meeting. Um, and this was, I think, because they seen me come in. So they went in the back and had this conversation. I guess that's what they came out with. Then he kept bringing up the NAACP. So we have not a demand, but we're asking people to have a boycott against local city activities because they weaponize them. And last night, that's what he did. He brought up the McKeesport NAACP 10 times throughout the whole conversation, just to let people know I do have black friends. And no, I do have these black friends, so I care about black people. So there's all these codes that I want people to recognize that he was basically laying out there. So I have the black friends piece. Um, we're going to have law and order here. We had the FBI look at it. We had other people look at it. It was the ground. And then he ends it with the compassion piece. Well, I've seen it. And, as soon as those cuffs were put on Mr. Stinson, everyone was respectable. And he kept saying respectable, which goes back to respectability politics. It doesn't matter if you're not respectful or not. It doesn't give you the right to kill me or beat the shit out of me just because I'm black and you're a cop. That doesn't excuse that. There's no perfect criminal. There's no perfect crime. There's none of that shit. Like, treat people with respect and give them to court to have their day in court. It is not the police's job to be judge, jury, and executioner. So he kept saying that. And I need people to dissect these things because what he's saying is in front of our faces is basically, as long as you're respectful, you won't get beat by the police. If Mr. Stinson would have been respectful before the cuffs went on, do you see, this wouldn't have happened. So people really need to understand why we're doing the boycott. Literally, that's the reason why. Since we put the boycott out, there have been so many things that have happened that have been like, oh, okay, that's why they put it out. So he brings up the NAACP's name 10 times, and he says, we're going to work with them. And we're gonna go to schools and talk to the kids, and we're going to do all of these things, but none of that is going to help stop the police from killing us. The police will have donuts with you and shoot you within an hour of each other because they want to get home safe, and they have this idea that we don't want to get home safe and alive. So do not buy into the community policing, the training, and the reform. The shit doesn't work. They tried this reform thing years ago, and we're back at the same spot. So it doesn't work. We need abolition. We need people power. We need community control, which is why we're pushing for a police review board. So I just wanted to kind of dissect that with folks. You can understand what was happening there yesterday. All of that was just, some tactics that they were using to try to calm people down. So that's why you keep bringing up the NAACP, and that's why you keep bringing up the respectability piece. So just to go over our demands, we have release the body cam videos and terminate the officers. Richard Dale, Nicholas Probla, Anthony Ladone, and Officer Parker Sheriff. Those are all the officers that were asking to be terminated because there's two viral videos, and we have them both on our blog. We'll put our blog into the chat, the link. There was one before Mr. Stinson involving a black couple, where it was a traffic stop that turned into the officer putting a gun to this man's back and breaking down the door to his home and scaring the hell out of his family. So, and then there's Mr. Stinson. So there's two videos. So there's four officers involved. We want all four of those officers, terminated. We also want a police review board. There is an Allegheny County one, and they can opt into that, or they can start their own police review board. Either one, but we do want the police review board, and we do want them also to have mental health responders respond with them. Um, and then we also want the police budget defunded by 10%. So we want to divest and invest. We want to divest that money, defund it 10% to put that back into the city, to like a separate group, have nothing to do with the city. Like this grant program or whatever they do should have nothing to do with the city. They can give that to a foundation or someone else, but the city should not be involved with it. And it can go to community groups working on violence prevention, or it can even go to scholarships. But 10% needs to be defunded. How people can help? Just boycott. We need people to not go to city events. We need people to not support the city events. If you have some kind of a contract where you're tied into it, we're asking you to not take pictures with them. Because if you do, you will be complacent in the bullshit. We have a strong fear that these cops are going to kill somebody because they're itching and itching up to this. So if you call yourself an ally, we're asking folks to join us in this boycott. Also, you can support our monthly activities. We'll be hitting up the next council meeting, which I believe is on May. Let me make sure I wrote the date down. May 7th is the next council meeting, and we'll meet there at 6:15 on 201 Lyle Boulevard. We'll probably do another political education session on April 29th at 6 o'clock, and then we're doing an Easter egg hunt on April 16th. So you can support all of these activities that TAG is doing. And then lastly, McKeesport is structured. It's a home rule charter. That's the structure. So within the charter, it gives the mayor a majority of the power. So a charter is like our mini constitution. It was passed in like I think it was the late 60s, early 70s, and they literally gave the mayor a lot of power. So it's a strong mayor charter. Council has the power to call for committees. Two of them sit on a personnel committee and have the power to vote. Outside of that, it's just very strong mayor. The mayor and his team mostly put up the ordinances and the resolutions that come out. So we're asking people to call the mayor and the council. The phone number is 412-675-5020. And you can also email them. We have all of these numbers up on our blog. We're asking people to call and push for our demands. So those are just some ways that people can help. We're also asking people to call the DA, Stevens Apollo, because he can have the body cam footage released, and he can also get involved to have these officers charged. So we're asking people to call Stevens Apollo and email. Stevens' number, or the DA, is 412-350-4401. So we're asking people to call there as well. Those are some of the things that we're asking people to do. If you're going to call yourself supporting us, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the McKeesport NAACP. So we did bring that up last time because what's happening there is just they're just being used as that like black friend, and we have tried to pull them in about that. That just was very unsuccessful. So we do have some other people involved. Hopefully, that we can come to some kind of a solution. But if not, then not. Then we're not going to argue people that ancestor Harriet Tubman would have shot. We're just not going to do that. Our liberation and our safety is not up for debate. It is not for sale. This is our lives we're talking about, and we're going to be serious, and we're going to be effective with that. So hopefully that can be worked out. But if not, so be it. We're still going to continue to do what we're going to do. So we have some current events going on. We all know what 47 is doing up there with this new administration. It goes without saying how horrible it is in regards to immigration, shut down Department of Education, getting rid of environmental justice funds and departments, and just empowering police to do what the fuck they want to do. And we have to continue to resist against that. I'm always going to tell people to also rest. Rest, take a pause and breathe, and you can rest and then still be active in some of these things. But continue to resist. Resistance isn't always action, it's also rest. So continue to resist, take action in your community. All these things that 47 is taking away, we can do ourselves. So just do it. If you're shutting down something, then do it in your own community. There's people out here who may have more free time. They may specialize in some. Ask them, hey, can you come teach this class in the community? Can I give you? Can I pay you? Or if I don't have the money, can we barter services? Like we have to get back to those kind of community oriented activities, because we can't depend on any system. And we've known that for years, which is why when 47 took over, tag wasn't, because we've already known that. But hopefully, we're trying to get other people to come along with us with that piece. So while we're going through these things, we have to be intentional about unlearning white supremacy, and how that has affected us. I do want to put a phone number out there that Casa San Jose has, and this is for anything. If you see ICE anywhere in Allegheny County, please call them at 412-736-7167. Again, that's 412-736-7167. That's an emergency hotline for Casa San Jose. We work with them a lot on doing immigration rights. So please share that number. If you see of ICE of anywhere, we know that they've been in the Mon Valley. We know that for a fact that they've been in McKeesport and they've been in Clarion. So if you see them, please call. Please call that number. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Bobbie. You don't have to, but
You got it all.
it's just the wildest shit. This McKeesport stuff is like to sit there and watch him blame the sidewalk. And I'm looking at like what the like.
It's funny that they needed time to come up with that story.
Right. Like you had to go in the back and talk about how you gonna blame the sidewalk. Like, and I'm sitting there like, damn. Like they think people are that, are that stupid. So it's like the audacity, like to blame the damn sidewalk
Oh man.
on it.
Yes.
So that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, and that's why it's so important for people to, to fight back.
Mhm.
Like that's how dumb they think we are.
Mhm.
They're just gonna take that shit and be like, oh well, like,
I
yeah.
guess the sidewalk must have.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it.
Gotta watch out for the sidewalk.
Right. Like, you think that people would just take that? And then he added at the end, well, I didn't say the sidewalk broke his ribs, but that it messed up his face. No, your cops broke his ribs. This is a 72-year-old man. There's other ways to de-escalate a situation than breaking that man's bones. So
That's
we
the
have
way you sound when you can't speak the truth.
exactly you're just making up stuff, and a lot of those tactics were tactics that come from Israel
Mm.
and that have been
Mhm.
used in Palestine. So there's all these connections with the policing and who's training these cops, and because that happened too. Like the technique of putting the knee on the neck came from Israel.
Mm. Mhm.
So there's all of these. None of these issues are separated. Everything is intertwined. Everything comes together. So we have to come together with as a community. To you have to really be in community with people, and that includes accountability.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's kind of where we're at right now as we're in this political struggle with the NAACP, the McKeesport NAACP anyway, is this like, no, we are at the point where we don't feel like we got to put up with that shit no more.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
our ancestors, our elders did that, and we don't have to do that anymore. So there's this political struggle that we're in with them, and hopefully they'll come around. But if not, que sera, sera. But we cannot stop fighting. We cannot be quiet, and we will not be quiet. So we'll put all these things in the chat section. Please amplify our demands. Please share the story. If you talk about it, please reach out to us so you can actually talk to the people on the ground. We do appreciate people sharing the story and sharing our demands. But if you're going to do it, please reach out to us so we can know what's going on and we can be in control of our narrative. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us, you all. We appreciate it. And thank you, Bobbie. That was amazing, the information and the conversation around the tech. And yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. No, thank you, and just thank you for creating another space to speak the truth, because that is what they're trying to do, which is create a falsehood, a false reality.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Mhm. Well, thank you all for joining us.